Welcome to the conversation at airsafe.com. I'm your host, Todd Curtis. On November 11th, 2015, the International Telecommunications Union, in conjunction with the United Nations World Radio Communication Conference in Geneva, announced a development that will allow aircraft over the ocean to be in constant contact with air traffic control. This is a great improvement over the current systems, all of which depend on ground-based systems including radar to track aircraft. I was interviewed by 938 Radio of Singapore about this development.
A UN conference has agreed to dedicate part of the radio spectrum to a global flight tracking system in order to avoid a repeat of the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 in March last year. Civilian flights are currently tracked by ground-based radar systems. The new system will utilize a frequency band previously used to transmit signals from aircraft to ground-based stations. Todd Curtis is founder of airsafe.com and a former aviation analyst with Boeing. He joins me now from the US. Now, first of all, Todd, tell us how exactly this new system would work.
Well, this new system is actually a variation of a system that's been in development for quite some time, something called ATC. And without getting into technical details, it's an automatic system to transmit information from airplanes to a receiving station. Currently, those stations are all based on land. So coverage over sparsely populated areas and over oceans is rather lacking. This new development from the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, will allow satellites to be added to the communications network, allowing these aircraft to communicate essentially all over the world.
Why wasn't this system thought of earlier?
Well, the system has been thought of for quite some time. In fact, for well over a decade, the ATC system, which underlies this new change, has been in development in the U.S. and elsewhere. It takes a long time in aviation to come to worldwide agreements on how radio systems should be used, how communication systems should be used. Keep in mind that this system is also being used in part to separate traffic to prevent mid-air collisions. So any change that happens has to be well thought out, and it usually takes a matter of months or years.
How much more reliable than ground radar would this system be in terms of tracking these flights?
Over the ocean, there's no comparison because currently, outside of coastal areas, near the coastal areas rather, there's no tracking over the middle of the ocean. So, for example, in the case of MH370, had the system been in operation, there would have been fairly reliable, fairly accurate tracking until the signal would be cut out, either because the aircraft was no longer flying or because the system was disabled. It would not have guaranteed that the aircraft would not have been lost, but it would guarantee that so long as the system is operational, there'll be constant information fed to air traffic control as to the position of the airplane.
Of course, plane tracking would only tell you where an incident occurred, maybe not exactly what happened. Do you see a future where what's recorded on black boxes can also be transmitted real-time to monitoring agencies?
Oh, certainly. I see this as a logical development from where we are now. That is, black boxes have been in aviation, in aircraft, airliners rather, for several decades. And until recently, until the last decade or two, it was simply not practical to have a worldwide 24-hour-a-day system where anywhere on the planet you can communicate from the airplane to the ground. What was done today by the International Telecommunications Union, in a sense, lays the groundwork for that. Because if it can be made workable for air traffic control, there's nothing to prevent this from being used for the black box type data.
Well, in the past, some airlines have not implemented certain safety features, certain other features as well, because of cost issues. In this case, will airlines have to spend money in order to implement this system?
That depends on the situation. And make a long story short, when it comes to international aviation, airlines, if they fly between countries, have to adhere to common international standards. If this becomes a standard for international flight, then yes, the airlines will have to implement it, no matter what the cost. When it comes to domestic aviation, countries have more leeway into what is required or what is not required of airlines.
Thank you very much for that, Todd. And that was Dr. Todd Curtis, founder of airsafe.com and a former aviation analyst with Boeing. He was joining us from the US.
For more information about MH370, please visit mh370.airsafe.com. For other information about aviation safety and security, please visit airsafe.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.